Yes, hello, and welcome along to the Irish F1 show. Once again, in association with PFT Travel. Our good friends are with us for another few episodes. Thanks to MJ for coming on board once more. PFT Travel, catering for all your transport requirements, from private minibuses to luxury air-conditioned coaches, giving you the perfect solution each time. Travel in comfort, arrive in style with PFT Travel. You can contact MJ on 087 624 8831 or email pfarrelltransport@yahoo.com. You can also find him on Facebook at pfarrell Transport Limited. Shout out to Rapco as well. These bad boys arrived the other day, courtesy of Barry and Keith Rabbit. I don't know, Shane involved as well. Last Barry there in a minute, but thanks anyone nonetheless. They're grand actually. If anyone wants one, get in touch with us. We might even send a few out to you there, but they look great and a few takers already. Barry and Richie, how are we doing?
Well, lads, all good. Yeah.
Did you not get the snapback memo, Richie? No, today was snapback day.
Collars up, Richie.
Yeah, what happened, man? Jenny, you're too busy with the gearbox, are you?
Richie got his hair cut, unlike the rest of us. That's why he doesn't have to wear the cap.
Yep, pretty much. Pretty much. Richie, what's the story with the gearbox? I know you were out in action last weekend and you had a great deal of success, but also a great deal of hardship.
Yeah, and a great deal of luck along with that. Leading the second race, won both races. Thankfully, car was pretty faultless through qualifying race one. And fortunately, with a good lead, a nice lead built up. Luckily, I lost fourth gear. I ended up getting stuck in third gear in Kirkestown. So, Barry, you know what it'd be like to be stuck in third on the two long straights in Kirkestown. So, I went from having
Swords road job, sure.
Sitting on the red limiter in third up the back straights. It was okay. I was able to carry the same corner speed, but on the straights was where they reeled me back in. So I went from having something like 15 or 16 second lead to finishing 0.001 the second car.
Squeaky bum time.
Yeah, it was. In fairness, it was.
Yeah,
it's just one of those moments when it happens and you're like, oh no.
And Richie, just to give the listeners and viewers a bit of an insight, how long does it actually take to change one of them gearboxes? I'm not talking about on race day, but even when you go back to the shed like you did the other day, you're at that for a good bit of the morning, I think, were you?
Yeah, I was at it for most of the morning. Like, in fairness, I didn't have to take the whole gearbox out. The way the single seater works is you just remove the rear gear cluster, and then you can start examining it and taking it apart. And so it just looks like I just stripped fourth gear. Luckily enough, the diff doesn't seem to be damaged. Any of the top first, second, third, reverse all seem fine. I just literally, for some reason, bang, and it stripped fourth gear.
It's all that power, Richie. All that extra power you have in that engine. Turbo.
I'll have you know, my power test, when I eventually did get it done, I'm only 140 horsepower.
Oh, well then, there you go.
That's all.
Baz, you had a track day as well. You were out the other day on a track day, were you?
Sorry, I lost you there for a second. Can I give again?
I was saying you had a track day the other day. Is that just a normal track day, or was there any kind of special thing going on?
No, just a regular track day. We've a radical. Myself and Shane have a radical, my brother, between us. And we just got the engine built on, so we're just giving it a few laps. We're out in it now on Friday of this week at the fundraiser event in Mondello. So if anyone's kicking around on Friday, make your way up to Mondello. There's a charity day for Autism Ireland. It's called Fundraiser. You find it on Facebook, and it's open to all. It's a real family kind of day. You come up and throw a couple of quid in the bucket, all for a good cause, and you can go out in a whole host of race cars and supercars in the passenger seat for a small donation. So it's a great day. Yeah, it's a really good day out. It's done every year. Jay O'Reilly there, a friend of ours, he does it every year, and it's it's a great day. It's a good day out.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it's a great day. Just to reiterate what Barry said, that's if anyone is knocking around Friday or at a loose end, get yourselves to Mondello. Unfortunately, I can't be there this year. It'll be the first year I missed it. I have a family wedding.
I was going to say that, Richie. It was on the list of things to do before we actually got to the end of the episode. But let's just give a shout out to the rooster. He's his big day is Friday. So himself and Zoe finally timed the knot. Took him a while to get down that knee first of all, didn't it? Fairness.
I wonder should he be getting down at all? 3 times had to be cancelled. Like, is our Lord not trying to tell him a message?
In fairness, Richie, I played football with him for a long time, and as long as I played football with him, he had a knee brace on, so we don't begrudge him the delay. In fairness, it's probably the worst injury he had, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but listen, all joking aside, the very best luck and enjoy the day. Enjoy the day. They're a great old crack. You can't bear go win. Right, lads, we're bringing back to the F1. So, yeah, it's like what, we've about 3 weeks now, 3.5 weeks until another race. All of a slap, just like that, just goes dead as it typically does at this time of year. But it's probably a good enough time to maybe recap, not just on last weekend in Hungary, but in general so far. But before we do that, an interesting 24 hours in terms of a bit of movement along the paddock, and it looked like Alpine had made a bit of a signing for themselves. I'm not great at pronunciation, guys. Oscar Piastri, am I getting that right?
That's it, yeah.
So obviously there was an announcement post by Alpine yesterday that Piastri was going to be with them for 2023, and not too long after, Oscar took to social media to say, "I understand that without my agreement, Alpine F1 have put out a press release late this afternoon that I am driving for them next year. This is wrong, and I have not signed a contract with Alpine for 2023. I will not be driving for Alpine next year." This is on the back of Fernando Alonso confirming that he's going to be with Aston Martin next year, which was also quite interesting. There's an awful lot in this, lads. But Barry, maybe give us your thoughts first.
Yeah, silly season, as they say. So, yeah, it looks like basically Vettel deciding to hang up the helmet was the triggered a whole lot. And from what I can tell and reading around various different sources and that in the paddock, it seems to be that Alonso and Alpine were struggling to come to an agreement. Alonso was looking for at least a 2-year deal or maybe more. And Alpine were only offering the 1 year because they obviously wanted to get Piastri in and didn't want to commit to a 42-year-old Alonso probably. So that was ongoing by all accounts. And in the middle of it then, of course, the seat became open at Aston Martin. And it looks like Alonso jumped straight into 2 feet and did a deal in real quick, in no time, over the weekend of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Now, it's also worth noting that apparently in F1, August 1st / July 31st is a bit of a deadline in an awful lot of the clauses for options and things like that. So that, August 1st was Monday. So, that's probably not a coincidence either that all this stuff starts triggering. So, yeah, it looks like Alonso jumped, he's been known to do it in the past. He kind of plays the political game. He jumped into a seat in Aston Martin. It could be a bit of a sideways move. Is it any better or worse than Alpine? I think if you're a Fernando Alonso, you don't really care whether you finish 5th or you finish 6th or 7th. It doesn't really matter at that stage. He's looking for a championship winning car. He's probably come to the realization that that's very unlikely to happen with Alpine in 2023. It's looking like he won't be there in 2024. That's what they were offering. So I suppose he just took a wild stab at Aston and the hope that maybe they could, look in on a good car. But the real thing then was Piastri. Everyone was waiting for Piastri to be confirmed. He's a Renault driver. He's won Formula Renault, Formula 3, Formula 2, one after the other in rookie season. So he's a definite talent. And he's been on Alpine / Renault's books for all that time. So everyone was just waiting for him to be confirmed. But he, as you said, he immediately put out the Alpine press release was quite unusual. It didn't have any quotes. It was kind of a bit wishy-washy. And then, within a couple of seconds, Piastri puts out a quote saying that, no, I'm not driving for them. So he must have signed a deal somewhere else that more likely triggered on August 1st that, if Renault haven't given him Alpine haven't given him a seat by July 31st, August 1st, he's a free agent. So what I'm guessing's happened is he signed a preliminary deal with someone like McLaren.
McLaren's been spoken about. Yeah,
that says, if by August 1st I'm not signed to Alpine, I will sign to McLaren. So as soon as 1 minute past midnight, August 1st kicked in, I'd say then that came into effect. So that's my guess on it, reading between the lines. The next interesting bit of that is, whose seat is he taking? Well, we know whose seat he's going to take in McLaren. If that's what happens, it's Ricciardo, and where's he going to go? And he's been dragged into it, as an innocent party almost. So it's multi-layered for sure.
Richie, I don't know if you're a conspiracy theorist, right? But there is a theory out there that, obviously there's a close relationship between Mark Webber and Fernando Alonso. Mark Webber is involved obviously with Piastri. Alonso leaves, and then this all kind of happens. And there is a theory out there that could potentially be a two-fingered salute. I don't mean peace out either. What do you think?
That's hard to know. Like Fernando joining Lance Stroll's team, Aston Martin. That to me was the biggest surprise of all of this. Like, I mean, if there was anything in the pipeline for Aston Martin, Vettel would have stayed where he was. He wouldn't have retired. Like, I think the fact there's nothing coming down the line that injected Vettel to say, listen, I'm not getting back in the top team. I'm fed up running around at the back here. I'd say Vettel has ambitions of Indy 500s and 24 hours, Le Mans 24 hours and things like that before he gets too beyond it. But listen, you're always going to get the conspiracy thing with Formula One. Like, I mean, like we've all been speaking about it at home here in work during the week, and who do we think is going to go there, and who, like, Fernando, like, he's burned all his bridges with any of the top teams, so that rules him out of a top team drive. I can't see Alpine, formerly Renault, even consider take Ricciardo back after, he terminated his contract early. I don't know what McLaren had offered Piastri for him to straight away nail it out that, no, I'm not a Renault driver. Like, I mean, every young lad's dream is to be an F1 driver. Like, I just thought that was strange as well, why he would just come out straight away. I don't know, McLaren must have offered him something pretty decent. But I don't know, it's going to be a strange one. A fair chain of events happen now. God only knows who will end up where. As like that conspiracies and things, I don't know. It's a very silly season. Like, anything can happen from here on in.
We've a couple of things to refer to. I don't know which one to go with first, but do you know what? I'll go with this because it's light, and that's what we're all about here. Alex Sullivan, in the past 24 hours then, has gone and released a statement himself. And he said, I understand that with my agreement, Williams Racing have put out a press release this afternoon that I am driving for them next year. This is right. And I have signed a contract with Williams for 2023. I will be driving for Williams next year.
That's great. Look, it's good to see them, getting them. But I wonder, was Williams actually going to put that out today, or have they jumped on the hype train to try and make sure they get loads of retweets and loads of, because I know they put up a thing earlier this morning saying announcement at 3:00, and sure, the place went mad. And it was that's really a non-announcement that Albon is staying, but yeah, they're definitely all jumping on it. And as I said, on my Twitter feed, I follow obviously a lot of drivers, racing drivers as opposed to F1 drivers specifically, and
gone.
Has put out a similar kind of tweet, basically just saying I'm not driving for Alpine. So I just like to use our opportunity here just to say that I'm also not driving for Alpine next year. I haven't signed a contract either.
Richie, it's not you either, no?
No, definitely not. My own contract is for Michelle until 2024, so I'm not driving for Williams either. No.
I tell you what was interesting, guys. Marcus Ericsson's tweet. I'll read out the whole lot of it. After Alonso's middle finger to Alpine switch, this is how the rest of F1 City season will play out. So Alpine, Ocon, Gasly, AlphaTauri, Schumacher, Tsunoda, McLaren, Norris, Piastri, Alpha, Bottas, Guan Yu Zhou, Haas, Magnussen, Ricciardo, Williams, Albon, De Vries. He might not be a million miles out.
I think Williams with De Vries is a good shout. I can't see Ricciardo going to Haas. I just can't. I think you do. I think you go, Richie. Well, there was someone else Richie talking about, but I think you go and do America or something before you go to Haas. I think Ricciardo would. So
couldn't see Ferrari letting Schumacher leave Haas either, could you? Unless it was to go to Ferrari, like.
Well, I can't see why AlphaTauri, the Red Bull junior team with all its junior drivers, will bring in an out-of-house driver in Schumacher. And Schumacher and Tsunoda will be a fairly big repair bill going by previous. I don't know whether that's a good combination. There'll be nothing. You wouldn't even have enough budget in the left over for a few sandwiches in the hospitality after they fixed the cars for both of them, probably. So
probably a status quo thing at Haas, you'd imagine, for another year.
Yeah, I'd say a good chance. I say De Vries in Williams is a good shout. As I say, I think that's probably the most likely, and Latifi would be gone. We'll see.
We never paid tribute to Vettel. I think we had just done our show last week, didn't we? When the news might have come out. So let's pay our own tribute. Not that Sebastian Vettel will be listening to the Irish F1 show, but if he is, sure, we'll pay him. We'll pay him his due, regardless. Now, the things that strike me, about Vettel, I love the photo. He's cleaning up rubbish after a race, and he always seems to be. He was out in one of the Arab countries as well, with the women going karting with them. Do you remember? Like, he thinks beyond the actual driving aspect. He seems to have a clear vision. He seems very humble and down to earth. And I've seen all these stories. One in particular that stood out was this guy staying at a hotel that Vettel also was knocking around at, and he let a roar down. I think he asked him, was he going to race or something? And he left 2 tickets hanging on the door when he knew he wasn't going. Yeah. Just seems like a really good guy behind it all, like, doesn't he?
It does seem sort of like if you were to pick one of them to go for a few points with, it'd probably be Vettel. You'd say, you wouldn't just be like listening to, apex speeds and data traces and stuff. You could actually probably have a conversation with him. He does seem like a fairly rounded individual and comes across quite well. But the only thing I'd say is there's been a lot of that since last week when he retired, but it's almost overshadowing what he is really, really good at, which is driving race cars. And I was listening to a podcast this morning actually with a guy from BMW Sauber, that's been with the team for years, and he said he was a bit of a slow burner. Vettel was when he came, because he was a BMW driver, which a lot of people forget, before he was a Red Bull athlete or driver, whatever you call it. And they said that they weren't particularly impressed with him in the first few tests, but he was a real methodical and just kept tipping away and learned the tweaks of an F1 car, and then they put him out in an FP1 practice and gave him kind of a light fuel load, and he went straight to the top of the times. And just said it was just his workload, his ability, everything just combined to be a really, good driver. And then of course he won in the Toro Rosso from pole, I think it was, in Monza in the wet, like. He won it on pace, like Gasly won in AlphaTauri, which was previously, Toro Rosso, which was previously Minardi, the same team ultimately in Monza, but it was a little bit, he kind of looked in on it a little bit, whereas that race that Vettel won, he won it on pure pace. He put the car on pole and he drove away from everyone and held the win the day after. In a Toro Rosso, which was only just out of coming out of the hands of Minardi, a perennial back runner, really, really talented guy, and there's 4 championships in a row, a testament to that. So, and the other thing as well is look how bad Ferrari are doing at the moment with strategy, and he would have been in the middle of all that in 2018, 2019. So I think we kind of look back now at maybe hold him in a slightly better light than we did at the time, considering what they're doing to poor Leclerc at the moment in terms of strategy. So, probably should have had another couple of championships there if he'd a proper pit lane team behind him.
Richie, how intense was the rivalry between Vettel and Alonso? And the reason I asked this was because one of the first things Alonso said after the announcement came out was, he was asked for his reaction or whatever, and he was like, I think you should get a haircut, which is probably, it's probably tongue-in-cheek, right? But, how intense was it really?
It was intense enough, in fairness. Both drivers are similarly minded, like for all Vettel's great traits, like out of the car, like, let's not forget, in the car, Vettel was just pure ruthless, ruthless. The stuff, even in his 4 championship winning years with Red Bull, stuff he done to Webber, like, just ruthless. It was win at all costs with him, very similar to what Alonso would be, or would have been a lot more back in the day. So I would say the rivalry was the way it was because they were both very similar in attitudes. And now, I know Vettel, typical German, like, he's just monotonous, and as Barry said, like, very, everything would have to be perfect with him now. I'm not quite sure what way Alonso is behind the scenes that way, but no, a good rivalry it was. I'm sorry to see Seb go. He's good for the sport, like, and it's an awful pity he ended up where he did, and he definitely without a shadow of a doubt, he should have had a 5th world title in 2019 with Ferrari. only for the very same as what's happening this year. Like the team's fuck ups, basically.
Yep. The one thing I would have to say from a humour point of view, Vettel obviously was very witty, right? But there's a couple of YouTube videos of him flirting, and some of the stuff, it was actually mad. In particular, he seemed to have a very good relationship with Lee McKenzie, and I don't know, there was something in the press conference about does he have her number, and he's just like, well, you have my number, you don't text me, like, and all this kind of stuff, and he'd be like, that's a lovely red dress, looking well today, and all this, like, just fucking. Just kind of one of the lads, I suppose. Is that probably a fair way of putting it? Just a lad.
I think his retirement. I think his retirement speech summed it up. You know, he's a guy that I don't know if you've seen it, but he came in and was kind of just. I think it was black and white. Just came in, sat in a chair, and just no razzmatazz, no nothing. Just sat down and goes, basically, I'm retiring, and now I don't know whether I said this before, but he said I'm retiring by the end of the 22 season. Which I don't know, I could be reading too much into, but I just thought that was a little bit of an unusual word for something that was probably scripted. You know, it didn't come off the top of his head. By the end,
at the end, yeah.
Yeah. Now, as I said, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it could be another twist in the silly season. He might just decide I've had enough after Spa or something, or any point. I don't know. But anyway, that's a little side point. But yeah, he came out in his retirement thing and he just said, "Look, I'm Sebastian Vettel," and he listed all the things that he is, and it was kind of, my favorite color is blue. I like the smell of brown bread, or I can't remember what he said. It was a load of just really standard, ordinary type stuff. And I'm a racing driver, which is kind of sums him up in what you're saying there as well, Kev. You know, he was a bloke that raced cars, as opposed to, more and more with these guys that are coming up through the ranks, they're completely cocooned away from real life and reality in loads of ways, and they just become, all robotic of some description. And it's not their fault, they're just not exposed to regular life, and they're surrounded by sycophants and yes men and everything else. So they're obviously going to be a bit different. But I think Vettel was maybe one of the last kind of few just kind of just a bloke who raced cars,
Yeah, and you even look at
last day when he spun and damaged the car, and he's sitting at the back of the car with the mechanic passing him fucking spanners and screwdrivers. Would you see any other driver on the grid do something like that?
Yeah, very rare, very rare. So he's sad to see him go, but if he's you might see. I think you could see him back in the odd Le Mans or IndyCar or something like that, maybe just for a bit of crack, a bit of fun. He'd be a great pundit, actually, wouldn't he? If they could get him onto the TV, onto Sky or something, he'd be
class.
Just
pure wit, like, yeah.
He'd be funny, wouldn't he? He would be funny.
He'd be good, I think, So yeah, that's that. We do kind of forget because his career was very front loaded. We kind of all them championships one year after the other from whatever it was, 10, 11, 12, 13, I think, and it didn't really work out at Ferrari, as we said, but we do kind of forget that for 4 years nobody got a look in with him. He was the class of the field, and he had a good car, but so too had his teammates, and he put every one of them away. Whoever, of course, as you mentioned earlier, being the main one, but he was able to drive those newly blown diffuser cars like no one else could, and that's testament how good a driver he really was.
Yeah, would he have been one of the few lads, Richie? And look, admittedly, we have to admit this, right? When Schumacher was winning the whole time, there was a lot of people that wanted someone else to win too, and that's kind of the case in general. When Hamilton was winning the whole time, we wanted someone else to win. Was that quite the case with Vettel? Like, it's hard for me to think back to that particular period of time because I just wasn't as interested as I am now. Like, but do you think there was a draw for someone else to win, or because he was such an entertaining character, was he a bit different to the norm?
Maybe he was certainly an entertaining character, but like his 4 championship wins, there wasn't any of them like that he blew don't get me wrong, he blew the opposition away, but like all these 4 championships came down to the last race, like. So yes, he was dominating the sport, but he wasn't winning to the level or the amount of times we'd say that like Schumacher or Hamilton was. His 4 championships were a lot closer with the rivals at the time, but he done 80% of the winning, which I think, and plus he was such a neat guy out of the car as well. no one wants to see the same guy win all the time. Let's be honest about it. But it wasn't really like that for his 4 championship seasons. Yeah, he like I say, he was winning, but they were tight, close championships.
Yeah, different sort of stuff altogether. So I want to just bring it back to the here and now as such with regards to driver standings. And after Hungary, Max Verstappen 258, Charles Leclerc 178. Big gap now, like at this particular point, not insurmountable, but it's still quite a gap. Perez 173, Russell 158, Sainz 156, Hamilton 146, and a long gap back to Lando Norris on 76 points. And then in terms of the constructors, then I'll give you a quick rundown on that. Red Bull 431, Ferrari 334, Mercedes 304, Alpine 99, McLaren 95. So like Jenny Ritchie, like it's soul destroying to look at it as a person who might have a bit of a graph for Ferrari and what they're doing. Can you just sum up very quickly what the attempt was the other day? Was there a logic in it? And how did it go so badly wrong once again?
Oh, Jesus, Kev. I mean, if you had a trained monkey given the strategy for the race, he'd do a better job. Like, you know, seriously. Now, listening to an interview with Toto Wolff straight away after the race, and he was trying to hold the laughter back. Like, he was like, but like, the problem really stemmed from Friday and Saturday in that Ferrari actually had no medium tires to put on the car on race day. They actually didn't have a medium to put on the car. So they were sort of forced to put the hards on. Now, how they let themselves run out of medium tires between testing and qualifying, like, good Jesus, I don't know. Like, even would have said it with your tire allotment. Like Toto said, listen, he says, on Fridays, he says, there's times I'm pulling my hair out, but there's nothing we can do. We have to keep the tires. We need the tires for race day. So it's one thing Ferrari topping every timesheet all the way up and into qualifying and qualifying on pole, but then not leaving themselves with a fucking set of tires to put on the car mid-race. Like, come on, Jesus.
Yeah, and like, how long more is this going to be, I suppose, tolerated? I know if the lads were really let say how they felt publicly, like if you think back, if this was a bygone era now, right, and just say, for example, that was a Senna, right, he was always outspoken anyway, even a Prost, a James Hunt, what they'd be saying, like, this is all a different world altogether. You're not allowed to open your mouth anymore, or you're gone, sort of a thing. But at what point are they going to say, right, lads, we're consistently fucking up, admit it publicly, which you'll never do probably, but they could even make an attempt at doing it, and hold people accountable, because it's not just unique to last weekend. Like, it's happening for ages now.
No, it's regular. And plus, like, there's one other side to this too that has to be looked at, is like, the driver is in the car. Like, at least Carlos Sainz had the balls to say, no, I'm not pitting. Leave me as I am. Like, I thought, like, Charles could have said, listen, lads, my pace is not too bad. Let's stay out as long as we can. Stay going as long as we can on the mediums that are on it. They don't feel too bad. Like, Hamilton was able to run himself well into mid-race on the mediums, and stick the sticky tires on it then for the last whatever, and if let him be after falling back to 4th or 5th, like Hamilton's drive through the field, he could have tried work his strategy. He would have suffered mid-race on bad mediums, but he would have been bolting on a brand new set of softs for the later stage of the race. Is what I would have done if I didn't have another set of mediums to go on the car. Plus the fact 3 teams put hards on the car 5, 6, 7 laps previous to Ferrari or more, and they were shite. Like, if that wasn't enough of an indication, they might as well have brought them in and put wets on the fucking thing.
Well, do you know what? Let's go live now to the cockpit of Barry Rabbit, who's on the move. Barry, I know you're still on the clock there, so thanks.
No, we're all right. We're stopped. My phone overheated. Would you take that? How did that happen in Ireland? It shut down and said it's overheated. So I turned around there to get out of the sun, to be honest. So we're back now.
The topic of conversation could have played a part as well. Yeah, obviously you've been listening to what myself and Richie have been talking about there. Like, what What's the story like? What's with all these monumental F-ups like?
I think if you go back, lads, you'll see I said before about Ferrari. Historically, they're so terrified of making mistakes, and they're so corporate and politicized, that they're so terrified of making mistakes. They just continually make mistakes, which is it's a thing that's been in Ferrari for a long time. They might have got away with it a little bit when they had such a performance advantage, or when they were not competitive at all. It wasn't in the spotlight. But now that they're competitive, but without that distinct advantage, it's showing up. So I don't think it's new. I just think it's more noticeable now. And the bit that I can't understand is Binotto has come on and said, oh, it's no problem, everything's fine, no, there's no issue. Blatantly is, like, you know what I mean, and just saying there isn't going to do any favors. I know he's probably afraid of saying there is a problem, because then all of a sudden the fingers start pointing, of course, at him, probably, but ignoring it isn't going to work either. I think they're just, like, they said that they had a plan and they followed the plan. Well, everything changed, though, from when they wrote the plan, because we've seen Red Bull change their tyres on the way to the grid. They had hard tyres on. They were going to start the race on hard tyres. And the drivers actually drove to the grid on softs to then put on the hards, and said, geez, lads, we can't even get the softs warmed up. Forget about putting the hards on. Let's change the strategy, because the weather was so much cooler. Ferrari made a plan the day before, and then, even though everything changed around them, they just followed the plan, because, again, they just seem to be terrified of doing anything wrong or out of the ordinary. And it kicked them in the teeth again. It's just so silly. It's so silly, and they're not idiots. It's not a lack of talent or anything there. It's just, people are just, they're just constrained too much by the Ferrari-ness of the whole place, and the terrified of being in the newspaper for the wrong reason, and then they end up in there for exactly that. It's an underlying problem in the team.
Yeah, it's deep rooted, and I need to sort it out, because, like, obviously we've been going through the standings. Mercedes are now hot on their tails, and the constructors, only 30 points between them. And just going back to the drivers once more, like, 258 Verstappen, 178 Leclerc. Is there any coming back here? Like, is this a done deal?
Done deal. I think Verstappen can afford 2 DNFs and not win a race for the rest of the season, and he should still be okay.
Yeah, he's 80 points ahead, so that's like 70. Like 3 wins and 3 fastest laps is 78 points. So that's how far ahead he is. So, like, if nothing else changes, if it was to stay at that gap now, the championship would be over with 3 races to go. And if anything, it's going to be more than that from what we've seen. We've seen nothing to suggest that Ferrari are going to figure it out. So I'd say, I don't know if I was to put a guess on it, I would say by the 5th to last round, whatever race that is, I think it'll be the good chance the championship will be wrapped up then, which that'll be one for the books, considering how it started.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Richie, because you remember the first 2 episodes, like, we were talking about Jenny Mac, they were looking virtually untouchable, weren't they?
Yeah, I don't know what's after changing. Like, something similar to what Barry said. It's like to get to a point and the freeze. It's like, oh, sugar, what do we do here? Like what do we do now? We're leading a championship, we're leading constructors, we're like, what do we do? Tense up and freeze, like, or this famous plan they speak about, that piece of paper that they wrote the plan with the crayon on was left out in a shower of water, and it just, now no one has a clue what to do. That. Do you know?
There's too many plans, because how many times have we heard them on the radio going, all right, Charles, it's plan E. That many plans. Like, that's by the 5th lap or something, when you're like, it's just, I think they're too rigid. I think, like, the Red Bull is probably the class leader in terms of strategy. And I know there's a girl there, Hannah, something or other, who leads, like Hannah Smith, I think is her name. She's the chief strategist at Red Bull. And she gets a lot of plaudits, and she deserves every one of them, because she's not, I don't think that, she's probably, she's very good at her job. But I'm sure there's people in Ferrari, similarly talented, but they're not allowed to do their job for fear of getting it wrong. I mean, if you're in a position where, you're more likely to get fired for trying something and it not working than just doing what you were told to do, even if you know that's wrong or it's not going to work. That sort of atmosphere and that sort of, I don't know, what would you call it, ethos in a business, which is what Ferrari is at the end of the day, isn't going to work. Nobody's going to put their neck out and go, look, I think this might work. They're just going to toe the party line and, basically cover their ass. That's ultimately what's happening. And that's what Bernardo was doing. And he's like, no, it's fine. No problems. And like, blatantly is. You were effectively first and second in that race with pace in your pocket, and you finished, what was it, fourth and sixth? I don't even remember. But it was, that's a problem. No matter what, you're just saying it doesn't change that.
And you, Barry, what I was saying just while you were gone was like, the driver has to take a small bit of responsibility here too. He's sitting in the car, like in fairness to Carlos on Sunday, he rejected his call to box. He said, no, I'm staying out. I'm not pit. Because I'd say he knew all he had was a set of hards to go on to. Like, should Charles have said, listen, lads, leave me where I am. I'm going to go into this race as deep as I can on these tyres, and let's change it around. Or like literally Stonewater saying, no, I'm not pitting. No.
Yeah, I think he definitely. I think it was, kind of, are you sure? But from Charles, but it needed to be more than that. It needed to be more about, I'm not doing it, and that's the end of it. Because it doesn't make any sense.
But it goes back to what you said about towing the line. That's exactly what you were saying about towing the line.
He's in the same position, and he's probably, as I said, it's a company-wide, a team-wide problem. Like, in my view, it's only my view. Obviously, I don't have any special insight to it, but I know from reading books and magazine articles over the years, it's not a new thing in Ferrari. So Charles will be just as susceptible to that kind of fear, if you want to call it that, of exposure. And that's probably why he's just said, well, I'll just go along with it, which is probably hard for him to do because he wants to win a championship. But, we all seen the finger wagging he got from Bernardo 2 races ago too. So, what was it they said? This is the worst day of my life. And he goes, no, it's the worst day of your life so far. It's those Simpsons line. So it was pretty true, I think.
I know we want to wrap this up fairly quickly, lads, but I'm going to summarise quickly, I suppose, that Leclerc the other day, the overtake, we're talking about a moment of the year, and that's what we'll do now. We'll talk about your moment of the year so far and what you see panning out, plain and simple, for the rest of the season, which is an easy enough answer. I'm going to go with, obviously, Max to win it and Red Bull Constructors. My moment of the year so far, I think yesterday and today, just off the track, I think that's just been gold, to be honest. But I'll come across to you, Richie, first.
Trying to think now. There has been a few, man. It's been a decent season, in fairness. I think, obviously, Max to win it, Red Bull to win Constructors. Moment of the season. Fair enough.
Charles and Max actually was in Bahrain. Remember that little duel they had? I know they've had a few this year. I think it was in Bahrain. It was epic to look at. I think on a couple of occasions they passed each other out. That's something that I should have put out there as a possibility. But anyway, it's your moment, Richie. Yeah.
Probably the tussling, whenever we've had the luck or the chance to see Leclerc go up against Verstappen, because Leclerc, when his car is good and when they are level pegging, Leclerc, he seems to give as good as he gets. He's not allowing Max to push him over. So I'd say the duels between the two guys when they're evenly matched, that'd be one of my highlights of the season so far.
Okay, Barry, I'm going to leave it at this.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's Verstappen's to lose at this stage, and I can't see that happening. The only point is now at what stage does he win it? Red Bull similarly. Moment of the season for me will be the closing laps of Silverstone, with the last few laps there where they were all climbing all over each other. Hamilton was in the mix, a whole lot of them. It was a Formula Ford race there for two or three laps at the end. That'll probably be my moment of the year on track. And yeah, the moment off track is pretty interesting too. So I'd say Drive to Survive are rubbing their hands together at the minute.
Yeah, big time, lads. Big time. Well, listen, it's been great fun so far. I've enjoyed doing this with you two guys. And we're obviously going to take a bit of a break ourselves now. We'll be back a week before Spa. So my thanks to the two of you, lads. Hope you've enjoyed it half as much as I have anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, great crack. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks a million, lads. We'll leave it at that. There we go. Richie and Barry, thanks a million. Another shout out to PFT Travel. for coming on board for the next couple of episodes. P Farrell Transport Limited on Facebook. You can contact MJ as well if you want to make a booking with them. 087 624 8831 or email pfarrelltransport@yahoo.com. And a shout to Rapco as well, who, as we said, gave us these lovely stickers. There is a few of those floating around. If anyone wants them, give us a shout. And that's where we leave it on this edition. If you have a moment of the year so far, or if you have a prediction, don't forget you can get in touch with us. irishf1show@gmail.com. And obviously, we're on social media platforms. You get us on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram @IrishF1show. That's where we leave it. We'll chat to you in a few weeks' time. Until then, take care.